She stepped back.
Who did this to you?
That single retreat changed everything. Mo Hyun-sik, the man who'd never hesitated, never softened, never cared, froze when his black maid flinched away from him. The purple bruise on her cheek told him exactly what he needed to know. Someone had touched her. Someone had hurt her. And as he sank to one knee in front of Aylin Drummond, his entire syndicate watching in shock, Seoul's most feared boss made a promise that would rewrite every rule he'd ever lived by. If you believe no one should live in fear of the person they trusted, hit that subscribe button for Ebony and Pearl stories right now. Let's stand together. The evening light filtered through the tall windows of Mo Hyun-sik's private residence, casting long shadows across marble floors that had witnessed 1,000 silent transactions. At 38, he'd built the Black Phoenix Syndicate into Seoul's most feared organization through precision, restraint, and absolute control. His tailored charcoal suit held no creases. His dark hair was swept back with deliberate care. His expression revealed nothing. But tonight, something fractured that perfect control. Aylin Drummond moved through the hallway with her usual quiet efficiency, but the grace was gone. Her shoulders curved inward, protective. Her steps were hurried, uncertain. In 6 months of cleaning his residence 3 evenings a week, she'd never moved like someone trying to disappear. Aylin. Her name left his lips like a command wrapped in silk. She froze mid-step. The laundry basket in her hands trembled. "Good evening, Mr. M.O., she said without turning around. Her voice sounded wrong, strained, fragile, like glass about to shatter. Hyun-sik's eyes narrowed. He crossed the distance between them in 4 measured strides, positioning himself where he could see her profile. That's when the world tilted. A dark purple bruise bloomed across her left cheekbone, stark against her brown skin. Her bottom lip was swollen, split at the corner. And when she finally lifted her eyes to meet his gaze, just for a heartbeat before looking away, he saw something that made his blood turn to ice. Fear. Not of him. Of something. Someone. Else. "What happened to your face?" "I bumped into a cabinet. Last night." "It's really nothing, A folded towel slipped from the basket and landed soundlessly on the floor. Her hands were shaking so badly she didn't even try to pick it up. Hyun-sik had interrogated arms dealers and rival gang leaders. He'd built an empire on reading lies in the twitch of an eye, the catch of a breath. But this wasn't business. This was Aylin, the woman who hummed Etta James while folding his shirts, who left her lavender scent in every room, who somehow made this cold, empty house feel less like a mausoleum and more like a home. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Aylin's breath hitched. Slowly, painfully, she turned. The full picture devastated him. Not just the bruise, but the finger-shaped marks peeking from beneath her collar. The way she cradled her left wrist against her ribs. The defeat pooling in her dark eyes. A defeat no amount of dignity could mask. For the first time in 12 years of running Seoul's most dangerous syndicate, Mo Hyun-sik froze. Not from indecision. From something far more terrifying. The realization that he cared, deeply dangerously cared, about what happened to this woman. He stepped closer. She stepped back. That single retreat flipped his entire world on its axis. "Everyone out," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The 2 guards stationed at the far end of the hallway exchanged glances but obeyed without question. The heavy doors closed with a soft click, sealing them in silence. Hyun-sik moved toward her again, this time slower, more deliberate. When he reached her, he did something that would later become legend within his organization. He lifted his hand, tattooed fingers visible beneath his perfectly tailored sleeve, and gently, impossibly gently, tilted her chin upward so she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "Who touched you?" The question came out softer than he'd intended, but there was steel beneath the silk. A promise forming. A verdict waiting to be written. "Mr. M.O., please." Aylin's voice cracked, tears pooling in her eyes. "I need this job. I swear it won't happen again. I'll cover it better next time. I'll use more makeup. Aylin." He cut her off, his thumb brushing dangerously close to the bruise without touching it. "I didn't ask if it would happen again. I asked who did this to you." Her lips trembled. The dam was breaking. He could see it, the weight of whatever she'd been carrying alone finally becoming too much. "It was an accident," she whispered. "I'm clumsy. Her sleeve shifted as she tried to pull away, revealing more bruises. Older ones. Yellowing at the edges. A handprint around her upper arm that made Hyun-sik's vision narrow to a pinpoint of cold, calculated rage. He sank to one knee in front of her. The gesture shocked them both. Mo Hyun-sik had never knelt before anyone. Not his father. Not his mentors. Not the men who'd tried to kill him on his rise to power. But here he was, eye level with his maid, studying injuries that told a story she was too terrified to speak aloud. "How long?" he asked, his voice dropping to something deadly calm, the tone his enemies heard right before they disappeared. Aylin's hands trembled uncontrollably now. She gripped the fabric of her uniform so tight her knuckles went pale. I can't. How long? 6 months, she finally breathed. Maybe more. I lost track. The same 6 months she'd worked for him. The same 6 months he'd noticed how she flinched at raised voices. How she wore long sleeves even in summer. How she never looked men directly in the eyes for more than a second. All the signs had been there. He'd just been too focused on his empire to see them. Until tonight. Until the bruise on her cheek became impossible to ignore. Hyun-sik rose to his full height, his mind already calculating, strategizing, planning. But when he looked down at Aylin, this strong, beautiful woman reduced to trembling apologies and desperate lies, something shifted in his chest. Something he thought died years ago when he'd chosen power over everything else. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice low and intense. "You are not losing your job. You are not in trouble. And whoever did this to you," he paused, letting the words land with full weight, "will never touch you again." "You don't understand," Aylin whispered, fresh tears streaming down her face. "He'll come back. He always comes back. And if he finds out I told anyone, if he thinks I—" "This was not an accident," Hyun-sik interrupted, his eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made the air between them crackle. "Someone hurt you. And I will find out who." The promise hung in the air between them. Heavy, inevitable, absolute. For 6 months, Aylin Drummond had been invisible. A shadow. A ghost in a uniform. But the moment Mo Hyun-sik saw that bruise, everything changed. Because the most dangerous man in Seoul had just decided she mattered. And when Mo Hyun-sik decided something mattered, heaven and hell couldn't change his mind. If you can't stand men like the one who hurt Aylin, men who use their fists instead of their words, who prey on the vulnerable, who think violence makes them strong, then subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories and comment what time you're watching this. Let's stand against every coward who thinks abuse is power. Only bullies and abusers won't hit that button. The silence in the hallway stretched between them like a live wire. Dangerous, crackling with unspoken tension. Aylin's tears had stopped, but her breathing remained shallow, panicked. She wiped at her face with trembling fingers, smearing the carefully applied makeup that had failed to hide her truth. "Mr. Mo, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have provoked him. I should have been more careful with my words. If I just stop." The single word cut through her spiral like a blade. Hyun-sik's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle ticking beneath his skin. His hands, tattooed, powerful, capable of unspeakable violence, curled into fists at his sides before he forcibly relaxed them. "I'm going to ask you one more time," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "And I need you to understand that I already know you're lying. So let's skip the part where you protect him and get to the truth." "Hurt. You." Aylin's composure shattered. Her knees buckled slightly, and she caught herself against the wall. The weight of 6 months, maybe longer, of carrying this secret alone finally broke through every defense she'd built. "Darian," she whispered, the name tasting like poison on her tongue. "Darian Ashford." Hyun-sik's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. Something ancient and predatory. "Your ex-boyfriend?" The way he said it, so cold, so controlled, made the temperature in the hallway drop 10 degrees. "Yes. We were together for 2 years. On and off. Mostly off lately, but he doesn't let go easily." Aylin's words tumbled out faster now, desperate to explain, to make sense of the senseless. "He's not a bad person. He just gets angry sometimes. Jealous. He thinks I'm seeing other men when I work late. He thinks he owns you." It wasn't a question. Aylin flinched at the accuracy of it. "He's unpredictable," she continued, her voice breaking. "Some days he's sweet, apologetic, brings flowers. Other days he's—" She couldn't finish that sentence. Didn't need to. "Violent," Hyun-sik finished for her. "Please." Aylin grabbed his sleeve, the first time she'd ever touched him, her fingers clutching the expensive fabric like a lifeline. "Please don't get involved. If you confront him, if you call the police, he'll know I told someone. He'll get worse. He always gets worse when people interfere. So you've tried to get help before. She nodded miserably. A neighbor called the cops once. Darian spent 3 hours in holding, then came back and... Her breath hitched. He said next time, I wouldn't be able to call anyone. He knows where my mother lives. He has photos of her house in Lagos. He threatened to. Enough. Hyun-sik stepped closer, and this time when Aylin tried to retreat, she had nowhere to go. But he didn't crowd her. Instead, he placed one hand flat against the wall beside her head, creating a cage that felt less like a trap and more like protection. I'm going to tell you something, he said quietly. And I need you to listen very carefully. Aylin's eyes went wide, searching his face. You think I don't know who comes near my home? Hyun-sik continued, his voice dropping to barely above a murmur. You think I don't have eyes on every person who works for me, who enters my property, who exists in my orbit? Her breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I already know about Darian Ashford. The world tilted beneath Aylin's feet. You? What? 3 weeks ago, my security team reported a man waiting outside your apartment building. Same man. 4 different nights. Aggressive behavior. Shouting your name. Shaking the stair railing when you didn't answer your door. Hyun-sik's eyes never left hers. I had him looked into. For security reasons. Aylin felt like she'd been struck. You investigated me? Not you, he corrected. The man stalking one of my employees. The man who made you flinch every time a car door slammed outside. The man who left bruises you thought no one would notice. Horror and humiliation flooded Aylin's face. You knew? This whole time you knew and you didn't. I didn't know the extent of it, Hyun-sik said, and for the first time, something that looked almost like regret crossed his features. I knew he was a problem. I didn't know he was putting his hands on you. If I had... He stopped himself, jaw working. If you had what? Aylin whispered. He would already be gone. The certainty in those 5 words made her blood run cold and warm simultaneously. Mr. M.O., you can't. Panic crept back into her voice. Please. I don't want violence. I don't want anyone hurt. I just want distance. I just want him to leave me alone. Hyun-sik stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language he couldn't quite translate. You're asking me to show mercy to the man who did this to you? He gestured to her face, her bruises, the evidence of Darian's cruelty. You're afraid for someone who terrorizes you? I'm afraid of everything getting worse. The confession burst out of her. I'm afraid of him coming back angrier. I'm afraid of losing my job if this becomes a problem for you. I'm afraid of your world, Mr. M.O. I've heard the rumors. I know what you do. I know what your organization is capable of. There it was. The real truth between them. She wasn't just scared of Darian. She was scared of him too. Something shifted in Hyun-sik's expression. Something almost like pain. You think I would hurt you? No, Aylin said quickly. But I think the world you live in is dangerous. And I think stepping into your protection might be stepping into something I can't escape from either. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Hyun-sik did something unexpected. He reached out slowly, telegraphing every movement, and brushed a strand of hair away from her injured cheek with infinite gentleness. The difference, he said softly, is that I would never make you afraid to leave. I would never raise my hand to you. And I would burn down this entire city before I let anyone hurt you again. Aylin's breath stuttered in her chest. He will not touch you again, Hyun-sik continued, his voice hardening to steel. That's not a request for your permission. That's a fact. Before she could protest further, he pulled out his phone and made a call. Jae-woo. I need you in the East Corridor. Now. Within 90 seconds, his right-hand man appeared. A tall, sharp-eyed man in his early 30s who took one look at Aylin's face and went very, very still. Boss. Hyun-sik's next words changed everything. Effective immediately, Aylin Drummond is under my personal protection. No one, and I mean no one, approaches her without my explicit permission. Assign a security detail. Discreet but thorough. If a man named Darian Ashford comes within 100 meters of her, I want to know about it before he takes his next breath. Jae-woo's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of his shock. Understood, boss. And Jae-woo. Hyun-sik's voice dropped to something lethal. Find out everything about Darian Ashford. Where he works. Where he drinks. Who he associates with. Every skeleton in every closet. I want it on my desk by morning. Yes, sir. By dawn, the whispers had spread through the Black Phoenix Syndicate like wildfire. The boss knelt. Mo Hyun-sik, the man who'd built Seoul's most feared criminal empire on ruthlessness and ice-cold control, had dropped to one knee in front of his maid. In the main hall of the syndicate's headquarters, 30 ranking members gathered in hushed clusters, their voices low but urgent. I saw it with my own eyes, one of the hallway guards muttered. He cleared the room. Spent 20 minutes alone with her. She's just a maid, another whispered. What could possibly? Look at Jae-woo's face, a third interrupted, nodding toward the right-hand man who stood near the entrance, his expression unreadable but tense. Something's changed. The massive double doors opened. Every conversation died instantly. Mo Hyun-sik entered the hall in a fresh suit, his presence commanding immediate silence. He moved through the room like a predator, unhurried, deliberate, aware of every eye tracking his movement. Behind him, keeping a respectful 3 paces back, walked Aylin. She changed from her maid's uniform into simple clothes, dark jeans, a modest blouse, but the bruise on her face was still visible despite fresh makeup. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, her shoulders curved inward as if she could make herself disappear. The hall erupted in barely concealed shock. Hyun-sik stopped at the head of the long table. Aylin remained standing near the wall, looking like she wanted the marble floor to swallow her whole. Jae-woo stepped forward, his loyalty to his boss warring with his confusion. Boss, he said carefully, the men are concerned. They're wondering who this woman is and why she's. She is under my care, Hyun-sik interrupted, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Not employee. Not staff. Not someone who works for me. Under my care. The implications hit the room like a shockwave. A younger member, bold or foolish enough to speak, raised his hand slightly. Sir, with respect, if she's just a civilian, why bring her into headquarters? Why expose her to? Did I ask for questions? Hyun-sik's tone dropped 10 degrees. Silence. Aylin Drummond is under my personal protection, he continued, each word measured and final. Effective immediately, she is afforded the same security clearance and respect as any ranking member of this organization. If any of you have a problem with that. His eyes swept the room, daring anyone to challenge him. You're welcome to voice it now. No one moved. No one breathed. I thought not. Hyun-sik's gaze hardened. And if I hear that anyone has approached her, threatened her, or even looked at her the wrong way, you will answer directly to me. Are we clear? A chorus of, yes, boss, echoed through the hall. But Aylin heard what they didn't say aloud. She caught the exchanged glances, the barely concealed whispers as Hyun-sik turned to speak with Jae-woo. The boss's weakness. She makes him vulnerable. His rivals will come for her. She's a liability. Terror clawed up her throat. This was exactly what she'd feared. Being pulled into a world where her existence put a target on both their backs. An hour later, Hyun-sik found her standing alone in one of the private sitting rooms, staring out the window with her arms wrapped around herself. You're thinking about running, he said quietly from the doorway. Aylin didn't turn around. I heard what they said. About me being your weakness. About how dangerous this is for you. They're wrong. Are they? She finally faced him, her eyes glistening. I don't belong in this world, Mr. Mo. I clean houses. I send money to my mother. I'm nobody. And now I'm putting you at risk just by existing near you. Hyun-sik closed the distance between them in 3 strides. Do you know what I did before all of this? He asked, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. She shook her head. Come with me. He led her to a private study she'd cleaned before but never truly seen. Now, in the afternoon light, she noticed details she'd missed. Shelves lined with leather-bound books, philosophy, poetry, history. A vintage record player in the corner with a collection of jazz and classical vinyl. And on a small table near the window, a delicate porcelain tea set that looked decades old. My grandmother gave me that, Hyun-sik said, following her gaze to the tea set. Before she died. She used to say that a man who couldn't appreciate beauty and stillness would eventually be consumed by his own violence. Aylin looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the tailored suits and deadly reputation. She saw a man carrying the weight of an empire he hadn't asked for but couldn't abandon. I'm not the monster they think I am, he continued. But I'm not a good man either. I've done things that would horrify you. But I've also learned that the very few things in this world worth protecting are worth any cost. And you think I'm worth that cost? I know you are. The certainty in his voice made her knees weak. She turned back to the window, trying to steady her breathing. Without thinking, she began to hum, an old Etta James song that always calmed her nerves. Hyun-sik went completely still. He'd heard her hum before while she worked, always thinking herself alone. But hearing it now, in his private space, directed at him, it did something to the knot of tension that lived permanently in his chest. It loosened. Just a fraction. But enough to matter. Don't stop, he said quietly. So she didn't. She hummed the entire song while he stood there. This dangerous man rendered harmless by something as simple as her voice. When she finished, the silence between them felt different. Warmer. Almost safe. I should go home, Aylin said finally, though her voice lacked conviction. Get some rest. Tomorrow I can. Stay here tonight, Hyun-sik interrupted. The guest wing is ready. Security is tighter here than anywhere else in Seoul. I can't hide from my life forever. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to be smart. She wanted to argue. Wanted to insist on her independence. Her normalcy. But the exhaustion of 6 months, maybe longer, of living in fear finally caught up with her. Just tonight, she agreed. Relief flickered across his face. Just tonight. But as Aylin settled into the guest wing hours later, as Hyun-sik reviewed security reports in his office, neither of them knew that Darian Ashford was already making his move. At 11:47 p.m., Hyun-sik's phone rang. Jae-woo's voice was tight with urgency. Boss, we have a problem. What is it? We sent men to monitor Aylin's apartment like you ordered. They just reported in. A pause. The door's been kicked in. Her belongings are scattered everywhere. And there are signs of a struggle. Hyun-sik's blood turned to ice. Where is Darian Ashford? That's the problem, boss. He's missing. His last known location was outside her building 2 hours ago. Since then, nothing. It's like he vanished. For the first time in 12 years of running the Black Phoenix Syndicate, Hyun-sik felt genuine fear. Not for himself. For her. Find him, he said, his voice deadly calm. Mobilize every resource we have. I want eyes on every street, every alley, every building between here and Inglewood. And I want it done 5 minutes ago. Yes, boss. Hyun-sik ended the call and stood frozen for 1 heartbeat, 2. Then he was moving, down the corridor, up the stairs, toward the guest wing where Aylin slept, unaware that her worst nightmare had just escalated into something far more dangerous than either of them had anticipated. Because Darian Ashford had just made the fatal mistake of striking back against Hyun-sik's world. And in Hyun-sik's world, that kind of mistake only ended one way. Hyun-sik took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering in a way it hadn't since he was 17 and staring down the barrel of his first gun. This was different. This was worse. Because fear for yourself was manageable. Fear for someone else, someone who'd somehow become essential in the span of a single evening, was suffocating. He burst through the guest wing door. Aylin sat up in bed, startled, her eyes wide in the dim light. Mr. M.O.? What's? You're here. The relief in his voice was palpable. He crossed to her in 2 strides, his hands hovering near her shoulders as if to confirm she was real, solid, safe. You're safe. Of course I'm here. Where else would I? She stopped, reading the fear in his expression. What happened? Your apartment was broken into. Darian was seen outside 2 hours ago. He's missing now. The color drained from Aylin's face. Before Hyun-sik could say more, his phone buzzed. Jae-woo's voice came through tight and urgent. Boss, we've got teams deployed across 6 sectors. Nothing yet, but expand the search, Hyun-sik ordered. Inglewood, Koreatown, every warehouse district between here and the docks. Check his old hangouts, his friends, anyone who's ever given him money or a place to sleep. I want him found within the hour. Yes, sir. Hyun-sik ended the call and turned back to Aylin, who was already climbing out of bed, panic etched across her face. He knows, she whispered. He knows I came here. He's going to. He's not going to do anything, Hyun-sik said firmly. You're safe here. He can't reach you. You don't understand. Darian doesn't think like normal people. When he feels cornered, when he thinks he's losing control, her voice cracked. He gets dangerous. So do I. The next 90 minutes were a masterclass in organized chaos. 30 Black Phoenix Syndicate members mobilized across Seoul like a silent army. They swept through Inglewood's back alleys where Darian used to score drugs. They checked the abandoned warehouse near the shipping district where he'd once worked security. They interrogated his associates, men who owed him money, women he'd dated before Aylin, bartenders who remembered his face. Hyun-sik personally led the search through Darian's last known residence, a rundown studio apartment that smelled of stale beer and rage. "Boss." One of his men called from the bathroom. "Found something." Sketches. Dozens of them. All of Aylin. Some torn from photographs, others drawn from memory. Her face, her building, her route to work. And in red marker across several images, mine. Hyun-sik's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "Keep searching," he ordered, his voice ice. "He's planning something. Find out what." But Darian was a ghost. No credit card transactions. No phone activity. No sightings. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. Until 11:53 p.m., when everything changed. The call came from the gate security. "Boss, there's someone here. A woman. She's asking for you." Hyun-sik's blood froze. Description. Black female, mid-20s, holding a backpack. Boss, she's pretty beaten up. Should we let her through? Now." Hyun-sik was already running. He reached the compound gates just as Aylin stumbled into view under the security lights. Her lip was bleeding fresh. A new bruise darkened her jaw. Her clothes were torn at the shoulder, and she clutched a small backpack to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Aylin." Her name came out strangled. She looked up, saw him, and immediately stepped back, that same instinctive retreat from the first night. But this time, tears streamed openly down her face. "He found me," she gasped. "I don't know how, but he found me. He was waiting outside when I went to get my things. I thought I could just grab my passport and..." She couldn't finish. Hyun-sik closed the distance carefully, his hands raised where she could see them. "You're safe now. You're here. You're safe." "He said he'd kill you," Aylin sobbed, her voice breaking. "He said he'd kill me too. He said if I didn't come back to him, if I didn't tell you to back off, he'd make sure neither of us survived the week." "How did you get away?" "I ran. He tried to grab me, but she showed him her scraped palms. "I just ran. I didn't know where else to go." "You came to the right place," Hyun-sik said quietly, and this time when he reached for her, she didn't pull away. He wrapped his coat around her trembling shoulders and guided her through the gates. "Jae-woo, get medical here. And I want every available man on finding Darian Ashford." He just escalated this into a declaration of war. While the syndicate's doctor tended to Aylin's injuries, Jae-woo approached Hyun-sik with new information. "We found him, boss. He's holed up in a motel off Highway 15. Room 304. Our men have eyes on the location." "How many exits?" "2. Front and fire escape. Both covered." Hyun-sik's expression went cold, the kind of cold that made grown men confess sins they hadn't committed yet. "I'm going personally." "Boss, let me handle this." "You don't need to. This is personal, Jae-woo." "I'm going." 20 minutes later, Emo Hyun-sik stood outside room 304 of the Sunshine Motel with 4 of his best men flanking him. He knocked once. Silence. He knocked again. Harder. The door cracked open. Darian Ashford stood there, a large man, 6'2", with a kind of build that had probably intimidated everyone he'd ever met. Until tonight. Because tonight, he was staring at Emo Hyun-sik. And everyone in Seoul knew that name. "Darian Ashford," Hyun-sik said calmly, as if they were discussing the weather. "We need to talk about Aylin." Darian's bravado flickered. "Look man, this is between me and my girl. This ain't your business." "She stopped being your girl the moment you put your hands on her," Hyun-sik interrupted, his voice conversational but lethal. "Now, I'm going to give you a choice. And I suggest you listen very carefully." Darian tried to puff up his chest. "You can't threaten me. I know my rights. I'll call the cops. Option 1, Hyun-sik continued as if Darian hadn't spoken. "You leave the city. Today. Right now, in fact. You pack whatever fits in one bag, and you disappear. You never speak Aylin's name again. You never think about her. You forget she exists. And if I don't?" Hyun-sik smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then you will never be found." The temperature in the doorway dropped. Darian must have seen something in Hyun-sik's eyes, Something that made it abundantly clear this wasn't a bluff, wasn't a negotiation, wasn't anything except a final warning. You're serious. As death. For a long moment, Darian looked like he might try something stupid. His hand twitched toward his waistband. Hyun-sik's men moved fractionally closer. Reality set in. Fine, Darian spat. Keep the bitch. She wasn't worth the trouble anyway. Hyun-sik's hand moved so fast Darian didn't see it coming. One moment he was standing, the next he was slammed against the doorframe, Hyun-sik's forearm across his throat. Let me be crystal clear, Hyun-sik said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. If you ever speak about her like that again, if I ever hear you've driven down her street, if you so much as think her name too loudly, I won't send warnings. I won't have conversations. I will erase you from existence so thoroughly that people will forget you ever lived. Do we understand each other? Darian nodded frantically, his face turning red. Hyun-sik released him and stepped back, smoothing his jacket as if nothing had happened. You have 1 hour to leave Seoul. After that, my mercy expires. When Hyun-sik returned to the estate, he found Aylin in the same sitting room from earlier, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. The moment she saw him, she broke. I didn't want this, she sobbed, standing and stumbling toward him. I didn't want anyone hurt because of me. I didn't want you to risk everything for. He caught her before she collapsed, pulling her against his chest as she cried into his shirt. No one was hurt, he murmured into her hair. I protected what mattered. Why? She whispered against his chest. I'm just your maid. I'm nobody. Why does this matter so much to you? Hyun-sik pulled back just enough to tilt her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. It matters to me because you matter to me, he said simply. I can't explain it. I don't fully understand it myself. But from the moment I saw that bruise on your face, something changed. And I don't want to change it back. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know how to exist in your world, she admitted. Then don't, he said. Just exist. Here. Safe. With me. The weight of the day, the fear, the violence, the exhaustion, finally caught up with both of them. Stay here tonight, Hyun-sik said quietly. Not in the guest wing. Here. Where I know you're safe. Please. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. And for the first time since meeting Mo Hyun-sik, Aylin Drummond said the one word that would change everything. Okay. Morning light filtered through silk curtains, gentle and golden. Aylin woke slowly, disoriented by the softness of the bed, the quiet, the absence of fear. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memories of the previous night crashed back. Darian's threats, her desperate run to the compound, Hyun-sik's arms around her, his quiet plea for her to stay. She sat up carefully, her body aching from yesterday's violence but healing. Someone had left fresh clothes folded on the chair, simple but expensive, in exactly her size. A breakfast tray sat on the side table. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, tea still steaming. Through the window, she could see 2 guards stationed outside her door. Not watching her. Protecting her. The distinction made all the difference. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, her voice still rough from crying. Hyun-sik entered, freshly dressed in another immaculate suit, but his eyes, those dangerous calculating eyes, softened the moment they landed on her. You slept, he observed. For the first time in months without waking up terrified, she admitted. Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me for doing what should have been done the moment I noticed something was wrong. He crossed to the window, hands in his pockets. Darian left Seoul 3 hours ago. My men confirmed he crossed the city limits heading north. He won't be back. Relief and something else, something complicated, washed through her. Just like that. Just like that. And if he comes back? Hyun-sik turned to face her fully. He won't. But if he's stupid enough to try, he won't make it past the city boundary. The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she'd felt in years. I need you to come with me this morning, he said. To headquarters. There's something I need to make clear to my organization. Anxiety flickered across her face. About me. About us. 30 minutes later, Aylin walked through the massive doors of the Black Phoenix Syndicate's main hall. But this time everything was different. This time, she wasn't 3 paces behind Mo Hyun-sik. She was beside him. At his side. As his equal. The hall fell into shocked silence. Every ranking member of the syndicate stood frozen, their conversations dying mid-sentence as they processed what they were seeing. The boss, their untouchable, unreachable boss, walking side by side with the maid they'd whispered about yesterday. Except she wasn't dressed as a maid anymore. She wore simple elegance, dark pants, a cream blouse, her hair pulled back to reveal her face, bruises and all, with quiet dignity. Jae-woo stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes sharp with questions. "Boss," he said carefully, "the men are waiting for clarification about yesterday's events. About the security protocols. About..." He glanced at Aylin. "About her status within the organization." Hyun-sik's hand moved to the small of Aylin's back, a gesture so proprietary, so protective, that several men inhaled sharply. "Her status is simple," Hyun-sik said, his voice carrying through the hall with absolute authority. "Aylin Drummond is under my personal protection. She has full access to this compound, to my resources, and to my time. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. Is that clear enough?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jae-woo's eyes widened fractionally. "Boss. Are you serious?" Hyun-sik's gaze never wavered. As death. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, Jae-woo nodded and stepped back. "Understood, boss." But Aylin could feel the weight of 30 pairs of eyes on her. Assessing, judging, questioning. She could hear the unspoken thoughts. Who is she to stand beside him? What makes her special? What happens when he gets tired of her? The doubt crept in like poison. Hours later, after the meeting dispersed and the syndicate members returned to their duties, Aylin found herself alone with Hyun-sik in his private office. "I don't understand your world," she said quietly, staring at her hands. "I don't understand the loyalty, the violence, the codes you live by. I'm terrified I'm going to drag more danger onto you. That your enemies will see me as a weakness. That I'll be the reason something terrible happens to you." She looked up, tears threatening. I'm nobody, Mr. M.O. I clean houses. I send money home to my mother. I have nothing to offer someone like you. I don't belong in this world, and part of me thinks I should leave before I ruin everything you've built." Hyun-sik crossed to her in 3 strides. He knelt, just as he had that first night, and gently lifted her chin until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "Then let me show it to you," he said softly. "My world. My life. All of it. Slowly. Safely. On your terms. You don't have to understand everything today. You don't have to be anything except exactly who you are." "And who am I to you?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "You're the woman who made me kneel," he said simply. "In 12 years of running this syndicate, I've never bent for anyone. But you," he paused, searching for words. "You make me want to be more than the monster they think I am. You make me remember there's still something human underneath all this." Aylin's breath caught. "I'm still scared." "So am I," he admitted. "Terrified, actually. Because caring about you makes me vulnerable in ways I've spent my entire life avoiding. But I'd rather be vulnerable with you than invincible without you." The confession hung between them. Raw, honest, dangerous. "I've spent 10 years building walls," Hyun-sik continued. "Becoming cold, becoming controlled, becoming exactly what this world demanded. But those walls also made me alone. Empty. Until you hummed Etta James in my hallway and reminded me what it felt like to want something beyond power." Aylin's tears spilled over. "I don't know how to do this. How to be with someone like you." "Neither do I," he said with surprising honesty. "I've never..." He stopped, seeming to wrestle with the admission. "I've never let anyone this close. Never wanted to. So we'll figure it out together. Slowly. One day at a time. And if I make mistakes? If I embarrass you in front of your people? Then they'll deal with it, or they'll leave." His voice hardened slightly. "I don't care what they think, Aylin. I care what you think. I care that you're safe. That you're healing. That you're here." She studied his face, the sharp angles, the tattoos peeking from his collar, the eyes that could turn from deadly to gentle in a heartbeat. "I'm still afraid," she whispered. "Then be afraid with me," he said. "But don't be afraid of me. Never of me." Later that afternoon, Jae-woo gathered the ranking members in a smaller conference room. "I know you all have questions," he said, his voice firm. "About her. About the boss's decision. About what this means for the syndicate." Murmurs of agreement. Here's what it means, Jae-woo continued. The boss has chosen. And when our boss makes a choice, we respect it. Period. Aylin Drummond is under his protection, which means she's under ours. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me first, and trust me, you don't want to do that. He let that sink in. She's not a weakness, he added. She's a priority. Learn the difference. Now get back to work. The message was clear. Adapt or leave. Most chose to adapt. That evening, Aylin stood on the balcony of Hyun-sik's private quarters, watching Seoul's lights sparkle in the distance. She felt his presence before he spoke. What are you thinking? He asked, joining her at the railing. That a week ago, I was invisible, she said quietly. I moved through the world like a ghost. People looked past me through me. I was just there, existing but not living. And now, she turned to face him, this dangerous man who'd somehow become her sanctuary. Now I feel seen, she said. Dangerously, intensely, irrevocably seen. By the one man no one else dares to challenge. Hyun-sik reached out, his tattooed hand cupping her uninjured cheek with infinite gentleness. You were never invisible, Aylin, he murmured. I've been watching you for 6 months. Noticing everything. The way you hum when you think you're alone. The way you fold corners of pages in my books when you dust them. The way you leave the world a little softer than you found it. Then why didn't you say something before? Because I didn't know how, he admitted. I didn't know how to be anything except what I am. But that bruise on your cheek, his voice roughened. It forced my hand. Made me choose between staying safe behind my walls or stepping out to protect you. And the choice was easier than breathing. Aylin stepped closer, closing the distance between them. What happens now? Now, Hyun-sik said. We rebuild. Your life. Your safety. Your trust. Together. And as the lights of Seoul glittered around them, Aylin Drummond realized something profound. She was no longer invisible. No longer alone. No longer powerless. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, dangerously, intensely, irrevocably seen, by the one man no one dared challenge. And the bruise on her cheek hadn't just changed her life. It had changed the entire future of the Black Phoenix Syndicate. If you believe love can bloom even in the darkest places, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories. Comment, I believe in second chances, if this story touched your heart. Don't let the trolls and hate win. Hit that subscribe button now.